Amy, thank you for being here today. Your upcoming book, His Last Mistress, releases April 24th. So first and foremost, congratulations. Very
Thanks.
exciting.
I'm
You
excited
know,
about it.
I'm excited to read it. And what inspired this story? And like what are some themes you're excited for readers to explore while they're enjoying your work?
Okay, so I feel like I need to have a preface or a caveat because
Totally.
it's not okay, so it's not upbeat. Let me
Yeah.
say that. So I write legal thrillers. This one
hmm
is like a cross between a legal and a psychological thriller, which means
hmm
that no good starts in the beginning. Uh, Nobody comes in. It's not I used to write romance, which, has well, at least a happy ending.
Yes.
So I make no guarantees. They just have satisfying endings. Not everybody's happy.
Hmm.
So So this is let's just say it's the culmination of this is the 15th thriller I believe I've written. And it's sort of a culmination of this series and this sort of world I've written in Cleveland, Ohio. And I have had over the series two different protagonists. One is Casey Cort and one is Nicole Long. They're both attorneys. One does criminal defense and one is a prosecutor. So they each have their own little journeys.
hmm
And I wanted to sort of, I don't know, like I feel like a capstone project. I wanted to have like a a way to sort of they've been around a long time. In their universe, it's been like since the 90s up until like 2012 or something, I think they're at. So they've had like a long timeline journey, which has involved a lot of growth. And I
hmm
sort of wanted to cap it off with, I want to say like an explosive book.
hmm
I can't say too much because that gives too much away, but they're
Sure.
long-term characters and 95% of them get a resolution.
hmm
So the book can be read as a standalone. It's
Okay.
like very psychological, thrillery, and people die and bad things
hmm
happen to people. And hopefully the bad people get their comeuppance, but the bad people
Yeah.
are not. Yeah, they're manipulating a lot of different people. I mean, they're
hmm
manipulative people.
As bad people tend to
Will
do.
do.
Yes.
And and I will say this, maybe as a trigger warning for people, there is a large component of domestic abuse
hmm
in the book, but not I've written a previous book called Abuse, which is just straight up domestic violence. But
hmm
this book is a little bit more of that sort of psychological, manipulative abuse. So more
hmm
like emotional and, I'm telling you one thing and I'm telling somebody else something different. And, oh, I didn't say that to you yesterday, that sort of thing, and less and other books, like people just, I'm going to kill you and then we're going to be on
Right.
trial. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a little different than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And as readers are, as they're reading this, is there anything that you want them to keep in the back of their mind or consider while they're, as the story's unfolding?
That's a good question. I think I want them to, how can I say this? Just because people say something doesn't mean it's the truth. And
Mm,
just because they are powerful or rich or have authority does not necessarily mean that what they say is right and what they say is true. I think that is the biggest, how can I, as a person who really feels the need for justice, and I don't get it. I mean, I live in a society that doesn't guarantee that.
hmm
I am especially bothered by people in power manipulating others around them. And so I think so I write about it because, the thing that bothers you is the thing, the thing that you write about. So
Yeah.
that's sort of, I want to I want people to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Very relevant theme these days in
Well,
particular.
let me
So-
say this. When I wrote the book, it was relevant, then less relevant, then more relevant. But,
Right. Right.
but to be honest, like corruption of power and corruption of people and like sort of the Machiavellian thing,
Yeah.
it comes and goes. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
I used to think that this is a huge turn recently. I used to think that humans were going to evolve and justice was always going to win out. And now I think it's just a wave. It's like, oh, look, corruption. Oh, look, enlightenment. Oh, look, corruption and look, enlightenment. I don't think I don't know if I believe the moral arc bends toward justice anymore.
Interesting. And do you think that we in the context of what you were just saying, do you think we need to almost have corruption in order to have justice, like the swinging
I
back and forth?
do. So my son plays this game. Oh God, I don't know the names of all the games very well.
That's
But when the game starts, he like rotates through games, but when the game starts, it talks about like this whole idea that people live this period of peace and they got complacent, and that's when the war started, and it was only when they had the war that they realized the peace was the thing that they wanted to retain.
hmm Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's great. And then the game goes on. I'm sure they're shooting people, and I can't with that. But
Right. Right.
but I do appreciate that. I don't think people always, I don't want to say appreciate it because that's not true for everybody, but don't appreciate like peace times or like government services.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I s- I agree with you. I think that by human nature and just nature in general, there's always this balance, right? And I hope for a world that's peaceful and full of justice and equity, but I also think that with that sort of yin and yang and that balance in the world, we unfortunately almost need as humans or expect, maybe that's a better way to do it, a better way to say it. We almost expect something and need the opposite to happen for movement to happen. And I do believe actually still, even with that, that most people are good inherently. I do think most people are good, but
So
I
I
also,
still believe that, but it's
yeah,
just there's not enough of them, or they're not loud enough, or I can't figure out because I meet like my personal experience of
yeah.
life is that like 99% of people are good and people are like
hmm
delightful, and like 99% of my day is like delightful. People are like
Yeah,
lovely and
yeah,
kind and will go out of their way to like help you out.
yeah.
But then I'm like, but look, they're gonna have this war. And I'm like, wait, what happened? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand how, and this is a disconnect, how my personal experience of people, for the most part, I mean,
Uh-huh.
generally
Yeah,
being okay. And then like, but then somebody's gonna start a war. And I'm like, this is such a huge disconnect because it doesn't make any sense. Because
right.
if most people, well, and I don't know, maybe I know some, if most people are okay, then how do we get there?
Yeah. Well, I think, and this, we are like, so what a way to start a
Sorry.
podcast. No, no,
That's
no. I love it.
right.
I love it. I think that I've been thinking about that a lot too. And I think most people who are good and happy don't need to start negative things, right? And they
It's
don't
true.
need the attention. It's like, I talked to my friend Rebecca about this a lot, where, I'm like, why are we choosing this? Like, we could all be on the beach, like drinking out of a coconut. Like, why are we get to choose these things? But when you're happy and you're calm and you're a good person, like, you just want to live your life, right? Like, you just want to,
That's
and so I think that's part of it. And it gets to your point of like, when this interruption happens, you're in this stasis of like, life's just good. I'm ha and is forcing you to push back in a way that you may not want to. But yeah, it's interesting. And these are not, even though, I'm not really joking that, wow, what a theme right now, but these are themes that we've seen throughout history and certainly in literature. It's we see it time and time again. And the good news is the good people tend to win. So that's that's a plus. So I love that you've done so much writing. What has gotten you here? Because you didn't start as a writer. So how has your journey gotten you here? Yeah.
oh, that's a good question. I in a different universe. I think about this a lot. So I have a son, he's 15.
hmm
And yesterday, the day before yesterday, I don't know, the days do run together.
hmm
I'm sorry, as a writer, like my days are all very similar. So
Oh,
it could be
yeah.
Sunday or it could be Tuesday, and honestly, not a lot of difference. Except that like I just heard the garbage truck go by, so I know it's Thursday. You know what I mean? Like, so he's been thinking a lot about like college, not like in an aggressive way, I mean, he's a
hmm
freshman, but college and like what he would want to do with his life. And in when I was a child, I wanted to write. So I remember like I don't know, you're probably much younger than me. My grandmother, although she didn't have this job, so I'm not sure why, she had steno pads.
Oh, yeah.
And
Love a steno pad.
I know. Right? So when I was little, I would like write like little short stories on steno pads, and I was like, "Oh, I'd love to be a writer." And then like we had a typewriter. I'm sorry, with the ribbon,
Same,
and I would
same.
like type, like stories, and I thought this is like my dream.
hmm
And then people started to ask me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And for reasons I can't know as a child, I knew that saying a writer was not going to be the answer that people wanted to
Mhm.
hear. So what I used to always say was doctor. And it's like you're a trained otter. And so you'd say doctor, and everybody would be like, oh, that's so
Yes.
great. You're so smart. You'll be great at that. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah,
they would move on and leave the child alone and go about their adult conversation. So that was my experience. And so throughout school, I figured, and look, I had like the high pressure family. So, I'm going to be honest about that. So,
sure.
as far as they were concerned,
Amy,
my,
are we related? Because this sounds very familiar. Yeah.
I did. I mean, I had the high pressure family. So there were a couple of artists in my family. I remember this because I'm an only child, so it's a little hard to explain, but my mother
Hmm.
had a first cousin.
Hmm.
So well, my mother's mother had like 9 siblings. So there were a
Hmm.
lot of people around, but I did not. My parents are both only children and I'm an only child.
Hmm.
So they were not like super closely related, but they were, everybody, we lived in New York City and Brooklyn, and like, within a 5 mile radius, everybody was there.
Sure.
So, so like there was my mother's first cousin's daughter was an artist. I remember as a kid, he would come over and she'd be able to do like exact drawings of like Cosmo. And I was like, this is like magic. But she had a day job. And then my mother had another cousin. This is actually the same family, so maybe the
Hmm.
artistic was in their family,
Hmm.
the Normans. He like would do these amazing things, but his job, he worked at a law firm. You know what I mean? So it was just
Hmm.
like, okay. So and maybe that's why I knew it was insane. So there was a lot of pressure, and I remember being in college, and there were people like I majored in English and I took writing classes.
Yeah.
So I had pressure to go to college, but not any pressure to do anything specific, which is I know it's a little odd.
Yeah.
So I basically, like, I'm 100% honest. I sat around in my pajamas and I read romance novels and I took like all the English classes I wanted to take. And I read like
Yeah.
all the books I wanted to take and I wrote all the things I wanted to take. And I had all these professors who were like, you should write for magazines or you should do this and you should pursue that.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's cute. But and I remember my English faculty advisor looking at me and he was like, so are you gonna go to New York? I'm from New York, but
Hmm.
my school's in Massachusetts. But he's like, are you gonna go to New York and work for publishing or like do these things, or are you gonna go work for magazines or whatever? And I was like, I love your optimism. But my family, that's not great. So when I was maybe junior, I don't remember when you apply for school, maybe I was a senior.
Hmm.
My mother was like, so are you going to apply to medical school? Which I couldn't because I didn't do the prereqs, obviously.
Right.
So she's like, so are you going to go to law school or are you going to get a PhD? And I was like, well, the academic world was not what it is now with the adjuncts and all that other stuff. But
Yeah.
I was in college and I was like, I don't think I'm going to get a PhD in English because I don't want to do what these people are doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, I guess I'm going to law school.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's how it happens. So in law school, sitting around and reading romance novels, I still did it, didn't have quite as much time to do it.
Hmm.
But I was like disconnected. I interviewed for no jobs in law school. I like sat home and I was like, I'm gonna do what I mean, this makes no sense. Like I could hear it. I'm gonna do what I want
Yeah.
because like they said go to law school. So I have gone, I am here, but realistically, I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want. I started a newspaper when I was in law school.
Uh-huh.
Like I was applying for jobs. I literally was not with it. And then I graduated from law school and I was like, huh.
You know what?
No way. I didn't think this through. So that's actually the sad part.
Yeah.
So so I got married and didn't, and then I was sort of sitting around. I moved to Cleveland, which is how the whole thing started with the books. All these books were set in Cleveland.
Right.
And I was like working for a newspaper and doing like this stuff. And both my ex and my mother are like, why aren't you practicing law? And I was like, you ask a good question, but I really don't have any interest in it.
Yeah.
And then between the two of them, it was like a squeeze.
Yeah.
Well, you should practice. Well, how do you know you're not going to like it if you don't try it? And all this. So that's so then I practiced law
Yeah.
and I hated it as much as I thought I would. I mean, I don't just say. So I started
Yeah.
with I went to an Ivy League school and there was a big push to work for big firms or big finance and be in the city and do
Sure.
that. And I was like, I'm very oppositional sometimes. And so I was like, not doing that. So I decided to open my own firm. This like my older self was like, what? it. So,
Also, though, like, sorry to interrupt, but a little part of me is cracking up inside because your version of rebellion is extreme success. Like, you're like, okay, I'm gonna rebel and go to law school. All right, I'm gonna rebel and open my own firm. Like, just
okay,
saying, it could have gone a very different way. But anyway, so
that's okay. I hear that.
yeah, I
So
think it's great.
then I was like, so I'm going to practice family law and I'm going to practice criminal law
Hmm.
because it seemed interesting. Like,
Yeah,
no offense to finance and
sure.
large corporations, but sitting, like, my friends were sitting looking at M&A documents. Like, it was the big merger, like, private equity era.
Hmm.
And they were spending all day looking at merger and M&A, merger and acquisitions
Yes.
documents. And all I could think of was,
Like,
no.
yeah, I can't. Yeah.
No, so I'm going to get down in the trenches and deal with these people. And wouldn't recommend that necessarily. I learned a lot about things I don't need to know about.
Hmm.
And I was a trooper and I did it for 5 years. And then I was like, I'm quitting and I'm going to write. And then I moved to California. So I thought the solution, oh, I have a friend who's going through this now. I think the solution to our problem is to buy a house and move. So
Hmm.
that's the solution to all problems.
Yeah.
And I've done it many times, and it turns out that's the solution to no problems,
Yeah.
except I will never be homeless.
Right.
But so I was like, well, if I move to California, then, and I've always wanted to live in California, then all things will
Hmm.
be solved. So, I mean, bought another house, moved here. And then there was like, why aren't you practicing law? So, I mean, I took another bar. Like, I have no interest in it. And I'm going to be honest, like, my idea of studying for the bar exam is basically watching TV all day.
Uh-huh.
I watched the entire Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. Um,
Love Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Yeah.
Loved it. That's what I did. And then I took the bar exam. Um, and like I can't with it. I don't understand how people do it. I don't have the capacity. And then I was like, so criminal and families not where it's at. So what I'm going to do is real estate because I know how to buy a house.
Yeah.
So I did real estate law for a couple of years and it's not uninteresting and I didn't dislike it. I just didn't why. So I set a limit. I said, okay, so once I pay off my law school loans, I'm
Hmm.
quitting.
Yeah.
I paid up, my law school loans were paid off in March and I quit like March 2nd. Like I was out.
Wow. Yeah.
I was like, see ya. And also the job was not that hard. So basically I spent time writing 2 books while I was working the job.
Wow.
And this is my boss. He was one of those people who liked to overhire because if he had a big legal department, then he would be more important. But
Yeah.
there was not enough work for 15 or 30 attorneys, whatever the hell we were. So so he was like, he remember he came in my office one day and he closes the door and he's like, look, a lot of people have a second job. And I was like, I don't want to, I don't want a second, I don't want the first job. Why do I need a second job? And he was like, so whatever you want to do or need to do to fill the hours, you should do that. And I was like, I have a computer and I'm ancient, a thumb
Yeah.
drive. So when I'm done with my work for the day, which is like 8:35 a.m., I was like, so I wrote 2 books. I was like, I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna write. And this time, like the quitting stuck, and my mother was upset. She's probably still upset to this day. Like I would go to a party, like I went to her 70th birthday party, and people are like, well, they're like, oh, I heard you're an attorney. And I was like, I haven't practiced law in, at that point, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I don't know.
Hmm.
And I was like, no, I'm a writer. And they're like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I write books. And they're like they're commercially available. And I'm like, you can look on Amazon. I don't know what to tell
Yeah. Yeah.
you. And my mother was mortified. She was just mortified that I was like telling people that I had this like writer job. And but I was committed. Like I was old enough to feel that I was like, I don't need to bow to anybody's pressure anymore. I mean, notwithstanding what I just said. And that's what happened. I decided I just wasn't going to do what I didn't like to do anymore. I was already doing too much of what I didn't like to do. And I was going to do less of it. So, and it wasn't great. Like my ex was a big into like, I think he used to think I sat in suspended animation. So like when he was home, I was like cooking and like performing wife.
Yeah.
And I didn't write when he was home, but he was an attorney. So he worked a lot and he traveled a lot. So I had at that time no kids. And so I had a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I was able to write quite a bit during that space of time.
Yeah.
And that's the
And
change, I guess.
and how how did writing help you while you were in that relationship? Did you find it to be cathartic? Did it give you an escape?
I think, and this is why I'm in therapy, because I don't actually have all the answers to this. I think it gave me an escape. And if I were to go back and read all the books again, so I've written a total of 25, maybe. I'd have to think about it.
I have 27 in my notes, so
So that's probably the
yes.
answer there.
Yeah.
That's probably the answer.
Yeah.
Like that, I have to really think about it. That's the problem. Oh no, wait, because the book I'm writing now is number 30. So,
Oh,
oh, okay.
I think
I
we
know
should
that's
just
number,
round up. Yeah.
well, I know that's 30 because like that feels like an achievement. Like I'm like
Yes.
30 is an achievement.
Yes.
So I guess the one that's coming out is 29. Whatever. I if I were to read them, I do believe, because somebody asked me this once, and I was like, oh, I do believe that it's me like telling a story of like women being able to advocate for themselves
Hmm.
and save themselves in a sense.
Hmm.
In many different stories, but pretty much probably the same story.
Yeah. And you've written novels across romance and legal thrillers. And do you have a preference? And like, how do you approach that? I mean, I guess they could be intertwined and similar, but how do you approach like different genres?
Wow, to me, they're not, well, no, they are different. I'm not saying they're not that different. I
Right.
don't want to
Sure.
say it that way. So, as a child, I read romance. So I had a grandmother, who had the books on the shelf,
Yeah.
my paternal grandmother. And children who read are, as long as you're quiet and well behaved, nobody pays attention to what you do, at least in my
Hmm.
family. So I read all the books and nobody bothered me about anything ever. Nobody ever asked me for do anything. I had to do no chores. I had to do nothing as long as I was
Yeah.
sitting and reading.
Yeah.
So people just not talk to me, and which was fine. And and so she had a book. It's called The Taming of Tamsin. It's British.
Uh-huh.
And I actually have it on my shelf. It's the first one I read. It's not great. I mean, it's like 70s abusive, but punishing kisses. He says nothing nice to you and he's mean to you, but on page like 150, he's in love with you and who knows why.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
knows why? Despite that, for some reason, those books really like spoke to me. So I read pretty widely and I still do. So I'll read anything. Well, no, I'm sorry, I don't read sci-fi and fantasy because
Hmm.
that's too much work.
Hmm.
I don't want a job in a book. But so I read everything, but those for some reason I found really compelling. I think now probably because it's the acceptance of people or
Hmm.
as of women, because they're written for women generally and by women, the acceptance of women for who they are.
Hmm.
So and I started writing those because, and this is more practical, romance is easier to publish. There are many more romances well, this is before the whole ebook revolution, but there are many more published. The publishers are more open. There are lower barriers to entry
Hmm.
for women writing romance, and it's a way to get your foot in the door in that industry. So there were some
Interesting.
practicalities to it. I read a lot. I could write those more easily. So I wrote two, and then they didn't get published, the saddest. And so I remember I was living in Ohio at the time. And I remember sitting in my office, in my house, not a job, not my work. And I
Hmm.
was like, I want to tell the story. I want to tell the story about a solo practitioner and her trials and tribulations. And so I sat down to write it. Writing romance for me at that time was a lot easier. I mean, there's so many more published. I'd read probably thousands of them.
Hmm.
And in terms of like thrillers, I probably read hundreds. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
far fewer. And to be frank, my brain can only handle so much death, so much injustice. Like it really it's a downer. And
Yeah.
I'd rather not every day. So I sat down to write that first thriller and it was awful. Like it was just awful. And I just was so disappointed with how awful it was that I sort of abandoned it. And then I went back to romance. And then I took a class actually called Finish Your Damn
Hmm.
Book. And I was like, I'm going to try this one more time. And I finished the book to let's just say an acceptable, like minimum acceptable level.
Uh-huh.
And then I wrote some more romance because I
Yeah.
couldn't get it published. And I got close. And there's like a lot of other factors. I mean, publishing is not this like egalitarian, like open
Right.
door industry.
Right.
So quality and the subject matter and all of that, depending on when you are trying to enter that, it was difficult. So I wrote more romance and the romances were published. And that's what happened. And so at some point, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 romances in, I think I want to revisit the thriller thing. I think I want to go back to that. And I had a much greater skill level in terms of writing. And I rewrote that book, like the first book. It's called Judged. It's available. But I rewrote that book maybe like, I don't know, 8 or 9 times.
Hmm.
And I hate hate working hard. And I had to work hard at that one.
Yeah.
And it finally it was finally good enough. But I started the book maybe in like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing, 7, 8 years before it was ready.
Hmm.
And so maybe it was I don't know. I don't know the publishing order. Maybe one, two, three, four, five, maybe the fifth, sixth, seventh book I published.
Mm.
So by that time, I had it together enough to do it. And to be honest, I wrote the one and I felt like I had told this story and I had like face the injustice of like the Cuyahoga County system. I have a lot of thoughts about it. Let me just say this. When I was there, I thought it was very corrupt. And when I left, many of the people that I thought were corrupt went to jail. They had a huge sting, they had a huge scandal. A lot of people went to federal
Yes.
prison. So I was like, oh, I wasn't crazy. Like,
Right. Right.
like it clearly there was something going on. And I think so. I wrote that and I was like, good, I'm done. I'm going back to romance. And then when I was pregnant, and like I had the thing about being a romance writer is that at the time there was a very robust Romance Writers of America and a very robust community. And there were people who we spent more time talking about the business of writing than the craft of writing. Like the
Mm.
craft is something, honestly, you got to work on your own. It's not
Sure.
really a communal sort of thing. You got to like sit at home and do the work. But the business, like people can teach you that or, give you the ins and outs. And there was a writer, actually Tessa Dare, who was really, and she was talking about romance at the time. She's like, but you really need a series. She's like, people love a series. She's like, look at what you buy, look at what you read, look at what sells. You need a series. And so after that, I'm going to be honest, like I wrote a romance series. And
Hmm.
then I looked up one day and I thought, oh, well, why can't Casey continue? Like there are
Hmm.
many more stories. Like it's not, I mean, being a lawyer, you don't only have one case.
Right.
So I wrote, I'm gonna be honest, the first half of a book and then I got pregnant. I don't know what happened. 2 years later, I wrote the second half of the second book.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
like I literally looked up and I had a 2-year-old and I thought, oh my God, what happened? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then that book is Ransomed, which I will say some readers are like, the first half is different than the second half. And I'm like, you
That's
don't
so
say.
weird. You say that. Like, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Now, how much of yourself, if any, do you see in Casey Cort?
She is not me. So to be frank, the Casey, actually, I talked to one of the people today. Casey is a combination of two people I know. They don't
Uh-huh.
know this. And it's just a combination of two lawyers I knew. Not really their personality, sort of like her life story, like
Hmm.
her background and stuff. Because I'm not from Cleveland and I really don't embody that well, I would say.
Hmm.
I mean, New York City is not Cleveland. Like it's a very like the Midwest is like it's a
It's
different,
different. It's different.
it's
Yeah.
different, it's different.
Yeah.
And they both were like small town Midwest people, and like so she's sort of just a combination of two people. I mean, she's really gotten beyond that.
Hmm.
But that was the genesis of her. The things that we had in common, the only thing we had in common was the solo practice and the client desperation and the corruption. I mean, that's
Hmm.
just whole cloth. But that's it. I mean, that's it. And because fiction needs like some sort of tension. She's a solo practitioner, but she has no spouse supporting her. So
Right.
she is up against it and having to make money. And it's a very hard system being a solo practitioner, and it's still hard today. I mean, I'm on these like Facebook groups and I'm like, God, this hasn't changed. But it's a very hard way to make money. How can I say this nicely? If you have like empathy and morals. I think the
Mhm.
less empathy and the less morals you have, the easier it is. So it's really hard because you have to like cut off clients if they can't pay. I mean, there's a lot of things you would have to
Right.
do in order to make money, but that's not the best advocacy and not the best lawyering.
Yeah.
And so she faces that. So she's got all this empathy and capacity and stuff like that, but the cases don't pay.
Mhm.
And even then, like you could take, and this is the most horrible thing. Every time I look it up, I'm always horrified. You could take cases from the county or the state, and the maximum they would pay. Okay, murder, death penalty was $10,000. 10,000 whole case. That's murder, death penalty. So the bottom cases pay 250,
Oh my gosh.
like 250 US dollars.
Yeah.
And every time I look it up, it hasn't changed. Like I've now I'm gonna the minute we get off this call, I'm gonna go look it up to see if something has happened.
Right.
But so even if you ran your practice based on cases from the state and the county, and the thing about the reason people took them is because they paid late or whatever, but the state and the
At
county are
least it
gonna,
paid. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
pay. So you're gonna get your money 30, 60, 90, 120 days later, but you are gonna get it.
Right.
Clients,
Sure.
so I did them, but she took a lot of those cases and then also had paying clients, but the pay is whatever it is. I mean, it's like middle class people who need a divorce, but doesn't, and then they have contentious spouses, but they don't have like oodles of money to
Right.
manage that. And so
Right.
you have to manage the fact that people don't have a lot of money versus what they really want, but people can't afford what they want.
Yeah.
So her tension is the lack of money and having to like support herself, and her parents didn't have oodles of money to help support her either.
Hmm.
So she's constantly fighting the idea of giving people the best representation possible for, how can I say, it's kind of the least amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how else, again, if all, did your experience in with cases shape these stories?
Well, there are lots of ideas. So
Hmm.
in the family realm, I did like regular divorce, like it's just people get divorced, but there's
Hmm.
always post custody, post
Hmm.
whatever, post judgment disputes. So there's
Right.
custody after that. There is juvenile court. So people who don't get married, and this is not the case in California, it's actually a little more fair, but in Ohio, if you're married, you can go to family court, which is like a lovely unified system in a lovely like 30s building, and like it's like a WPA building. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
There's 5 judges. Things are fair and orderly. If you're not married, then you're in juvenile court, which is half criminal, half juveniles. It's called delinquency, but half juveniles who've done criminal things, and then
Hmm.
half unmarried people, and then also abuse, neglect, and dependency. So you're
Mm.
just jumbled in there. And so I've been to these. You go to domestic relations court, it's like empty marble hallways and you can echo and it's beautiful. And then you go to juvenile court and it's packed like, I don't even know what to say. It's like packed like sardines. Like
Yeah.
there's like thousands of people in the hallway. They're screaming your case out in the hallway. Your time with not even a judge or a magistrate is like 10 minutes. And they're like, what do you want to do? What
Yeah.
do you want to do? Okay, well, you're not agree. You'll be back here in like 90 days or 120 days. So those things I did write about because I
Hmm.
felt I still feel that it's fundamentally unfair just because just because you're married doesn't mean you should get better justice.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And
Alas.
then, yeah, what is your typical amount of time to write a book, or does it depend on the book? Are romance novels faster to write or shorter, or how
Mm.
do you manage your time? Or is it just the story comes as it comes?
I am not the best at time management. So this is awful. My son came to me the other night. He like comes to my room and he goes, "Mommy." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, Do you think you have undiagnosed ADHD?" Like literally out of the blue. And I was like, "What just happened?"
Yeah, yeah,
Like I'm sitting here minding my own business.
right.
And he was like, "You don't sit still." And I was like, "That's true." I was like, "But I managed to keep the lights on, so as far as I'm concerned, it's going well."
Yeah, yeah.
My low key goals. So it takes me about 9 months to write a book.
Okay.
But this is like in 4 minute stints. Like I was at like, so I work out a lot, and as I age, it's not going well. And so I'm at the physical therapist and they're like, "What do you do for a living?" And I'm like, "I'm an author." They're like, "Oh, so you must sit for 8 hours a day." And I was like, "No, I sit for 8 minutes at a time." Like, but okay. You think what you want.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
So it gets done. I'll just say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Over 9 months to a year, it gets done. What truly happens, I couldn't say.
Yeah. And then it's funny because you have brought up hard work multiple times. Like, I don't, that's hard work. I don't want to do that. What
Because
do
I don't
you
want to do
consider?
hard
I
work.
totally, yeah. I mean,
That's
again, we could
awesome.
be on the beach right now drinking out of coconuts. What do you consider hard work? Like because to me, what I'm actually hearing is when you're in a sort of like a flow, or you know that you're supposed to be doing something, that's what you're drawn to. Not necessarily that the other stuff's hard work, but how do you define it? Like, what's hard work to you?
If I had to sit in an office and like, I don't know, look at documents all day. And I don't, that's not physically hard. It's just like mentally I'd be like, I'd
Mind
check
numbing.
out.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my, I'm sorry. Oh my God, the horror. And then like digging ditches and stuff. I mean, that would be hard
Sure.
work.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look at like bus drivers and I think if I had to sit all day and I had to drive up and down that same road, like somebody
Couldn't do
like
it.
I couldn't do it. Like I don't
Yeah.
know. And now they wear earbuds, which I have a lot of feelings about, but in terms
Yeah.
of distracted driving.
Right.
But that or something like doing something I didn't want to do all day, I think that would be the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then i- at what point do you feel like it shifted for you where it wasn't, oh, like, I guess I should do this thing because it's expected of me? When do you feel like you kind of came into your own of like, no, I get to set the expectations and I get to set what the path is?
Somewhere between 36 and 43.
Hmm.
There was a time when I thought I want to write, and then there's a time I thought I don't want to be married anymore. Like those
Hmm.
made the two major shifts in my life where I thought I don't want to do this thing that everybody expects that I'm going to do.
Hmm.
But those are the only two. I don't know if it was age or just like frustration. At some
Yeah.
point and I think about this now because then you look and you go, okay, so I'm not going to live forever. So if
Right.
I'm not going to live forever, do I want to live the rest of my life like this?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much that's the threshold. I'm like, nah.
Do you ever feel like you're putting some of your personal experiences into the page, even inadvertently?
So no, not at all. Because I think the writing has always been divorced from life. Not
Mm-hmm.
not me telling the same story, like women, solving their own problems and saving themselves or whatever. Like I see that now,
Oh, of
like
course. Yes.
clearer now. But so that hasn't changed. The themes haven't changed. No, not at all. It hasn't changed at all. Not at all.
That's
Sorry.
okay. That's all right. And, what would you say, and maybe it's not one, but has there been a book or an author who has really impacted you, influenced you? And it could be writing or just personally.
In writing, there's a couple authors, and they're so wildly different. So there's two authors that have like really impacted my writing.
Hmm.
One is a romance author who's like in her 70s now. She may be in her 80s. Gosh, save us all. Named Barbara Delinsky. So she was popular in the 80s and 90s, maybe even the early 2000s. She probably hasn't published a book in 5, 10 years, but she was able to write about women in relationships and feelings in such a way that I felt it.
Mm.
Whereas a lot of books are kind of surfacey, and you're just like I'm reading a book now, and I was like, literally don't care about these people, but just tell me a story, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but she was able to write books where I really cared deeply about these women and their problems, like so deeply. Like I've read every
Mm.
single one of her books. And then the other is so that's romance. And she also wrote women's fiction because in the 80s and 90s, a lot of romance writers were graduated, and I don't mean this in any pejorative way, to women's fiction. So in the publishing world, you could make more money and sell more books. So you went from like paperback monthly releases, like on the little spinny thing in the
Right.
drugstore, to hardcover bookstore releases. And the way
Hmm.
you did that was moving from short romance to longer women's fiction.
Got it.
Okay. So I followed that author through that whole journey.
Hmm.
And then similar, well, no, this is a completely different author. The other one is a woman named Elizabeth George, and she also, God, they're also old now. I was younger, we were all younger.
Yeah.
So she simply writes, for the most part, a single series. She's from like Orange County, but she writes about like a British lord who's basically like a cop, and his partner. But her themes are really about justice. And for some reason, like some of her characters, like I think about them often.
Hmm.
I mean, I really think about them often because she really like drills down into how difficult it is to have justice in a society that is fundamentally unfair.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it resonates. But she
Yeah,
writes one book a
absolutely.
year, so obviously I have to do something else with my time.
Something else with your time. Well, you do a lot of stuff. You do like yoga and knitting and all
See,
kinds of things. Like, do you have an ideal way that you recharge?
well, I travel a lot, so that helps because it keeps it interesting. So
Hmm.
I spend not half my time. I spend a few months of the year. I used to spend, I have a child, so like there's some complications, and being divorced
Hmm.
makes it even more complicated. But
Yeah.
so I used to spend more, but I spend like 4 months of the year in Europe.
Hmm.
And that helps a lot because it's a different environment, different people, God knows different language. And like it keeps it interesting. Like it
Hmm.
keeps it interesting
Do you
in
have
terms
a
of
like a home base there when you
yeah, yeah,
travel?
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I bought an apartment there. Oh my God, I was just looking about this today, 2012.
Oh, nice.
So years
That's
ago.
great. Yeah.
Couldn't afford it today. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're like,
Yes. You're like,
somebody
ooh,
was
that was good.
like, couldn't afford it today. But it was cheap back then. Cheaper. Like, but and so I have a home base there. I just yeah.
Cool.
And so I'm there when I'm there.
Yeah.
I may be there in 2 weeks. I may be there in 3 months. Who knows? But so I'm there when I'm there, and I find that that recharge. And then also I do travel to other places. So like my
Mhm.
son in 2024, like he really wanted to go to Machu Picchu. Like this is random because I have no interest in this. No offense to like people who love archaeology and ancient civilization's not my thing.
Yeah.
But so I do things like that. And I went to Iceland. Those like places I find like sort of interesting. And
Yeah.
it recharged me in the sense that you don't have to think about like your day-to-day grind.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you have a favorite place that you've traveled or that you will never get sick of going back to?
Well, there's my place in Europe, but other
Sure.
than
Yes. Well, that's good.
that, other than that's nobody's ever asked me that because I don't go to the same place. So I never not like there are places you go like you're gonna go to London and you're gonna do this thing or you're gonna see
Mhm.
people here or whatever. And I was
Mhm.
in Italy like a few in January, December. Not my favorite place at all, but
Mm.
my son wanted to go to Rome, so we went. Places that I like to go back to. That's interesting. You know, a friend of mine today was asking me, she's thinking about going to Portugal in I don't know, 6 months. It was the timeline was unclear because she was
Yeah.
driving and I was just talking to her while she was
Sure.
driving because she had a long drive. And I really, really loved it. Haven't been back. So I go back to places I don't like and I haven't been back to places I love. And now I'm gonna have to think about that.
Interesting.
Because there's
Interesting.
places I
Very
don't
cool.
like that I'm there all the time. And I'm like, why am I here again? And there's places I really like and enjoy that I don't ever go.
Are you going back because of other people or obligations or
Yeah, there's other people in
okay, yeah,
obligations. So
it's
that's
not
the
just
thing.
like you're trying to work through it.
Well, no, London, I spent a lot of time trying to work through. Like,
Mm.
because when I was younger, like my mother really liked English novels, and
Hmm.
I read a lot of them. And then the first time I went to London, the disappointment, I can't tell you. So in my head, it was like late, like 19th century London. And then
Right.
I get there and it's
Totally.
like late 20th century London. I was
Yeah.
like, and I know they had a war and I know the bombing. So I mean, I understand like
Sure.
some of the, and I was like, oh, this is not what I want. So like
Right.
I kept going back. I was like, I'm gonna love this place. I'm gonna love it really hard. And I was actually just looking for pictures because I was looking for something on my computer. The last time I went, like a couple of years ago, maybe I thought, this is okay, but I still don't love it. And also the same
Hmm.
with Paris. Like I just people love it. And I don't understand. And I was there this summer and it was the Olympics. And I was like, I don't understand what people love about this place. But I let go of it like a few years ago. I was like, I think it's okay that I don't love this.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't have to try harder
Right. And it
to
doesn't
love it
mean
more.
I felt that way about Paris.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I don't have to get into the reasons why, but I think I had similarly to you like this idealized version in my head that I don't think has ever existed except in my head.
Probably not.
Yeah, like I don't, I think it was part of Aristocats. Like I don't, it's just like this whole amalgam of things. And it doesn't mean that I won't go back. And there's things that are great about Paris, but it's when you let go of having to try and like something. And on the flip side, I was like interested when I went to England. I wasn't like I loved London. I mean, I absolutely found so you never know how you're going to react to a place and why certain things you're drawn to them or not drawn to them. But yeah, letting it go and saying like that's okay, it's just not for me. Yeah.
It is. So my place is in Budapest and I spend a lot of time, well, not justifying it because I don't have to do that. But people keep asking me, they're like, what do you love about it? Because that's not Paris. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I don't have a good answer for you, but it's the place I like, and
Yeah.
I'm too old. I'm just done trying to explain it. Like, I like
Yeah.
this place. You don't have to love it. You don't have to live there. You don't have to do anything with it. But
Yeah.
and they're like, but what about Paris or what about London or what about whatever, Rome? All, and I was just like, I just don't enjoy it. I can't tell you why, but
Yeah.
I found what I enjoyed and I like that. And I like soul, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me because like what's wrong with Budapest? Like it's you know what I mean? Like why are we comparing cities? It's you know.
Oh, we talk about that so much. There's like, I think there's two places that like people feel sacrosanct. It's like Japan and France. If you like
Hmm.
those two, everybody's like, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
After that, and I know a lot of writers, so I know a lot of writers who've left the US and live lots of places, mainly because
Hmm.
it's cheaper. And people are always like, well, why do you live in Costa Rica? Or whatever it is.
Right.
And I like sometimes I listen to these conversations and I think, I don't think I'd ever live in Costa Rica, but I don't have to live here. He's living his life. He's
Correct.
enjoying
Yeah.
Costa Rica. Good for him. You're like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. I lived in DC for 15 years and I'm not there now and I moved to South Florida for work and when I first moved here and told people that, they were like, "Oh, you must be so happy to be out of DC." And I was like, "I would move back in a heartbeat." Like I love, and it's really funny how we have these ideas of places in our head. And I was like, you've known me for 5 minutes. You never lived in DC. You probably went on your sixth grade trip 30 years ago. Like it's really interesting how we do that to each other sometimes instead of just saying like, "Oh, what do you like about Costa
That's
Rica?"
the
Like,
conversation I don't understand why we don't have. So when people say like if well, I have a lot of friends. Like somebody just moved to like whatever, doesn't whatever, someplace. And I'm always like, oh, what do you like about it? And they're like, I like this, that, the other thing. And I'm like, that's so great for you.
cool.
I'm
Yes.
so happy that you found home. And like we always have these conversations about finding home. I'm so glad you find a place that you love.
Yeah.
That's it. Like I don't have to live there.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, this has been we're like bounced all over the place. It's been such a fun conversation. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about or that I missed?
I think that the thing I'm actually thinking about this now, the thing I think I'm thinking about books and reading a lot. I'm actually reading. I'm always reading like 5 books right at one
Hmm.
time. I'm actually reading a lot of books about reality TV because I'm like
Mm.
I finally realized after 20 years that I'm like the only person who's not watching reality TV. So I was like now, and there's like a whole lot of books about it, so I can read about it. No, the thing I think I probably want to say is I think I wish I what I have found helpful about reading is that it can help you like see people's lives see life from different perspectives and then
Hmm.
also have empathy. And I think I wish people read more because I want people to have, because you can only live one life. Like I've only lived in New York and I've only lived in California and I've only like, lived in Budapest. Like I don't have like an infinite number of
Hmm.
days and an infinite number of lives. But through reading, at least, I've found that you can like have such great empathy and see such different perspectives and also see things. And I don't have to have the trauma of everybody's everything. You know what I'm like?
Right.
You're like, oh, that's awful, but I'm glad I know about it, but I don't want to have to live this to know this.
Correct. Yeah. Did you ever read The Midnight Library?
No.
So
Mm.
you may like it. It's the protagonist gets to live multiple lives. And like
Oh.
so it's essentially like a million doors and behind each door is what life could have been if. And
Oh, that's
yeah.
like, oh, you just like spoke to me.
I feel like you'll devour this book in like 4 hours. It's an
Oh,
easy
I need to go to
read.
bed tonight. Okay, yeah, I
Yeah,
hear you.
yeah, tomorrow. You can read it tomorrow. But but yeah, I think that's one of the things that I love about books as well and reading and it's different. And I love TV, I love movies, I love podcasts, I love music, I love all of it, right? And I love, what's considered very, high art and I love trash. Like I love a below deck season. Like it's great. It's trash. I know exactly what's going to happen and I eat it up. But the thing that I really love about books is there's something about what happens with your brain that doesn't happen when you're processing like visually. And I love the connection piece. Like there's something so incredible about reading a different genre or someone from a different culture or a different time, and you're like, whoa, like I get that, or I see myself in that, or I don't see myself in that, but now I understand it in a different way,
Hmm.
and I see the world in a different way. And I think we need more of that, right? Like we need more of that in the world. We're much more connected than I think we give ourselves credit for. So,
Yeah.
so what is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
You know, what actually came to mind is forgive your trespasses. So I went to Catholic school in elementary school, and I was just thinking about forgive your trespasses because what I now know is that so I used to stay up at night thinking woulda, coulda, shoulda, like if I'd
Hmm.
made different choices, and I now know that I couldn't have made different choices. So I think
Yes.
what I think I tell my younger self is forgive yourself the choices you're going to make.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't get to where you are without those choices, which
Yeah.
is tough. That's a toughie. Like
That's
that's
the thing I
I'm working on that in therapy. Yeah, it's that is hard. And what do you love most about what you're doing? Whether it's writing, traveling, all the above. What do you love most?
let me say, I was thinking, so occasionally, like there's, what is the thing called? I'm so sorry. And I don't buy lottery tickets, but it's called
Hmm.
the big multi-state lotto thing.
Like the Powerball or
That's
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So every so often there's like a Powerball, and people I know, and I know a lot of people with a lot of money play Powerball, which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. Anyway, a lot of thoughts about it. I was like, but I think somebody, so I was talking to a friend who's going to play Powerball or whatever.
Hmm.
And she was like, if you won the lottery, like, what would you change about your life? And I said, there's nothing I would change.
It's amazing.
So that's the thing. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm good. Okay. Like, there's some things around the margins I would change, but that's other
Sure.
people. Like, I would
Yeah.
change other people's behavior. But since you
Yeah.
can't change other people's behavior, then we are where we are. But I would not change. I get to write, I get to do the things I want to do. I'm good.
That's a great place to be in. That's amazing. And now I want to know your thoughts on people with money playing Powerball.
So, okay. How can I say this? So, in the world I live in California, I know a lot of people who like are millionaires and they
Mhm.
have like they're doing like the top of the 1%, the tip. Yeah, we actually did calculated this, like friends and I, the top 1/10 of 1% of people,
Mhm.
like not billionaires, but they're doing good.
Yeah.
You know, I won an Oscar. I did this. Fine. Okay. They're playing Powerball. And I'm just like, if you won $1 billion, like what would change? Like you would have like a 14-bedroom house instead of like an 8-bedroom house. Like I just can't. And
Right.
nobody has been able to, of the people I know who play it, who are already doing just fine, has been able to articulate what would change. And I don't
Hmm.
know like what the fantasy is of winning like $1 billion or what half a
Right.
billion
Whatever it
after
is.
taxes.
Yeah.
I nobody's giving me an adequate answer, and it's the thing like it's the thing I want to know the most right now. Like, so if you won it, what would you do? Would you have like four like Mercedes instead of three? Would you have like 15
Right.
G-Wagons instead of 14?
Like, would
Like,
you stop working? You
and
know what I
then
mean?
for
Like, if you
so
could stop now,
half of them don't work because they're
yeah.
fine. And the other
Yeah.
half don't work for money. They work because of that compulsion to like,
Right.
I gotta make the movie, or I gotta make $1 billion, or I gotta have like a bigger jet, or I don't know, whatever
Sure.
that is.
Sure.
So I don't get it. Like that's the thing. Like,
Interesting.
because every time I drive by, there's like I think it's a 7-Eleven, like
Hmm.
let's say 5 blocks down or something. And when I turn through, like there's a cut through, and I pass the 7-Eleven and they have the flashing light of what the money is or whatever.
Hmm.
And every so often, it's right next to the library, to be honest. I'm like always over
Hmm.
there.
Oh,
And
my 7-Eleven's by the library too. Maybe it's a thing.
so sometimes I do a walk like 5 or 6 blocks down there.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, so what would they get? Now I'm going to call my friend and ask her because I just don't know what they would change. Does that mean you would leave your spouse? Like you could finally like have autonomy. Like for some of the women, I wonder if that's it. Like,
Yeah.
could I leave him if I had this money?
Hmm.
But I don't think anybody would ever say that. Like the problem with getting divorced is I found like people are like, oh, I wish I could leave. And I'm just like, and then they tell you all their problems, and then you have to go to a party, and you're like, now I have too much knowledge.
Right. Yeah.
So part of me thinks it's that, but nobody's ever going to say that out loud. So I just wonder, like, you can't have more houses, more cars, more jets, more travel, and you can't have more days in your life. So then what?
Then what? Yeah. That's interesting. If you find out, I would love to know.
I'm dying to know.
I laugh at myself because I don't play lotto unless it's like, $200 billion or whatever it is for Powerball. And I'm like, oh, I gotta buy a ticket. Like the first time I did, I was like, I don't know how to do this. I like went to the cashier and I was like, one ticket. What do I do?
I think that's half the reason because I was like, if I go in and they're gonna be like, you like idiot, you can't figure out how to buy a lottery
Yeah.
ticket.
Cash. I do know that. Cash. And then I don't pick my numbers. I'm like, you go for it. But I laugh at myself because I'm like, like $500,000 would be great. Like, why am I only playing
I know, why do people, and that's the thing, why
billion?
people play when it's a billion, but why they wouldn't when it was 20 million? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll take a good like scratch off $10,000. That's exciting, right? Like,
Keep it moving.
I
I could
don't
do
know.
something with this.
Our relationship to money and especially like money that's won is really that's interesting. So thank you for sharing that. And how can people find you?
So 95% of places, I'm just legal thriller author.
Okay.
It was taken on TikTok by somebody who's never
Mm.
posted. There's always this one thing. So there I'm like social thriller author, but I hardly ever post on TikTok. It's not my thing.
Sure.
My son loves it. My friends love it. I
Yeah.
don't understand it. So everywhere I'm just legal thriller author.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. I bet that's why your son came in and asked if you had ADHD because TikTok convinced me for a while that I might have, and I was like, no, you don't. You're just like,
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Oh, because it's full of like diagnoses. Okay.
yeah, oh, 100%. Because I was like, I do love spoons and have opinions about them. And I was like, you're good. You're fine. You love a spoon. So anyway, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. And I
Thank you
look
so much for
forward
having
to
me.
reading and best of luck as you continue your journeys and thriving.